So we want to create a flashlight game mechanic where we press F and the flashlight turns on, and then it consumes energy. Once we press F again, it stops consuming, and we can also pick up batteries that will refill our energy. So let's start right away. This is an environment I made for one of my lectures. However, we will start out with a standard first-person blueprint and first-person character. First, I will clean up the character and remove all the stuff that we don't need from there, like all the VR stuff, the stick support can go home, and also these guys, which is also VR support, go away. Put these in here. You don't have to do this, it's just to have a clean slate to work on and to make this tutorial better to follow. So one last thing we need to do in the construction script, like remove this one, and then also remove all those guns in here, motion controller stuff can go home, and also I want to hide this skeletal mesh hidden in game, like so. And now we have a clean slate to start to work on. Perhaps I will even make my character a bit slower, which would be the max walk speed in the character movement component. Just put it to 300, and then we have a nice walking movement. Normally, when creating a flashlight, you would just put a spotlight in here, which we will also do. Oh, where are you? There. Spotlight component, and then you will bind it to the first-person camera in order to have it moving around with a mouse movement, like so. That's great. Then you will set up your spotlight accordingly, like perhaps make the outer cone angle a bit smaller, inner cone angle a bit larger. The attenuation radius should be 2500, which is 25 meters. The intensity is unitless currently with 5000 unitless units. We can open the Show Advanced rollout and give some meaningful units here, like the candelas, and then put an intensity of like 120 or so. Test it. Yeah, that's great. Also, I would like to move the component a bit, like here on the shoulder, so that we get some kind of interesting shadows from it when peeking around the scene. Perhaps even give it a light tilt to the left. I'll play it again. Yeah, that's nice. So let's go back to the event graph. And when creating a mechanic that uses some kind of input from the player, we normally use the keyboard to start out. To use keyboard events, we have to go into the project settings. We need these input bindings here in the project settings. Open the action mappings. The reset VR is something that we can rebind. We rename it to flashlight. We can move all these bindings. Trash can. And as a key, I would like to get the F key. Am I blind? There it is. So now we have a binding that's called flashlight, and it's bound to the F key. We close the project settings and now open the first-person character again, and we will find the flashlight event right here, right away, as an action event. There it is. So normally when establishing a flashlight, you will just want to turn it on and off, which would be easy. You just would need the spotlight reference and then toggle its visibility, and then you have it right away, like a flashlight that you can turn on and off. However, this system is limited. This flashlight will work forever. So we want to have a gameplay system where energy of the spotlight is consumed by the spotlight, and we want a pickup system. When picking up a battery, it will refill the spotlight. So to do this, we will establish a timeline, and the whole system is based around this timeline. The timeline is basically the spotlight energy, like the length of the timeline is the spotlight energy. And we will shift the starting point to refill it. We will look up the position on the timeline when we stop the flashlight and then restart the flashlight and stuff like that. And the timeline will ultimately drive the spotlight's intensity. So we will remove toggle visibility. And to start out, we drag from spotlight and set intensity. Like so. Now we will establish our timeline. From pressed, we drag off and type in timeline, add timeline. This will be our flashlight driver, and it will update the intensity of our spotlight. We double click the flashlight driver in order to create a float track, like here. And in our case, we won't have a ramp up, but a ramp going down, because the flashlight will have its full energy capacity at the beginning, and this energy will be consumed over time. So we add a key here, add another key. This first key would be at time 0 and a value of 1, because this timeline basically acts as a multiplier to our flashlight maximum intensity. Now we set the second key at a time 7, so it won't take ages for us to test it, like 7 seconds, and the value of 0. Now we have a down ramp. However, I don't want to have a linear decreasing light intensity. I want to have a light intensity that is constant for a time of 5 seconds. So we add another key. This key would be like time 5 seconds and value 1. So we have 5 seconds of full capacity energy, and then it will drop down to 0. Now we don't close our timeline. First we have to tick on this use last keyframe. Otherwise the finished event of the timeline will fire before the timeline really ends. Because our timeline is longer than 5 seconds. So we use the last keyframe to define the timeline length. So we turn that off. We should totally name our new track, which would be here, like right click the name, rename. And this is 1 to 0. So that's a bit more meaningful. So I said this one is a multiplier that multiplies the maximum spotlight intensity. For this we need some kind of variable. Right click new intensity, then promote that to a variable. Name this one like flashlight max intensity, like so. Compile it, give it a value of 120, and now drag it off. Do it and press Alt and left mouse button on new intensity, so it will remove this wire. Drag off this 1 to 0 value and type in asterisk like this, which is multiply basically. And then we will multiply this with the maximum intensity, like so. So right now when we test it, the timeline would fire off. So let's have a default intensity of 0 in our spotlight. Save that and now test it. Press F. Wait 5 seconds, and now the light should decrease. There we go. And now we can press F again, and the timeline won't start over again, because the timeline is connected in the play event. And the play event just plays the timeline until it is at the end, and then it will stay at the end, which is good for us, because we don't want to play it all over again from start. We just want to play it, because this is energy basically, and once it's depleted, it's gone. It should not play again. So, however, currently we only modulate the intensity of the flashlight. So basically it's always on. But I don't know how it behaves with the shadow casting with the light. It might be there is some kind of performance impact, some kind of shadow still calculated, even though the intensity of the light is at 0. So we will really turn that light off once in the timeline. So we get a reference of our spotlight here, drag off from here and set its visibility like so. The new visibility will be off, like false, and put it to finished. There we go. Perhaps give it a bit more space so we don't have too much spaghettis overlapping here. Just make it a bit pretty. Okay, so the timeline is finished. And now imagine we get new energy for the flashlight driver and we want to start it all over again. We first then have to make the spotlight visible again. So we do that right now. Copy that, put it here, do it like so, and then turn it on, of course. Now play. There we go. The behavior is the same as before. However, the flashlight is now really turned off when it's gone. So what do we do when we press F? We want to turn it off in this case, because we want to save energy when we don't use the spotlight. So we need some kind of branch here. This branch will go into the play event when it's true, and when it's false, it will go into the stop event. Like so. And when we go into the stop event, we also want to turn off our spotlight completely. So that wasn't necessary. Just do it like so. And turn it off. So when we want to turn off our spotlight, we really turn it off. Now we need some conditions that will choose if we go the true path or the false path to stop the timeline. So let's say we press F and we are currently in a stopping mode and want to start the timeline again. We first need to know if it's even valid for us to play the timeline. This is only valid when the timeline position, like where we are currently in the timeline, is smaller than the timeline length. So we get in the components, we get a reference to our flashlight driver, press Ctrl and left mouse button and get a reference to it. And now drag from it and get the playback position. Compare it to the timeline length and see if it is less than the timeline length. Get timeline length. So when that is true, we are allowed to play the timeline. However, we should also ask if we are not already playing the timeline. We can also ask this here from the reference, like is playing. And if we are not playing, like drag from the bool and type in not. When we are not playing and also our playback position is smaller than our timeline length, then we can go and play the timeline. Like drag from here, type in and, put the not boolean in the end, and this is our final condition that decides which route we go. Because when we are already playing, we automatically go into the false path and stop the timeline. However, when we are not playing and press F, and also our timeline playback position is smaller than the timeline length, then we can go into play. So that's it, basically. To test this, we will quickly do a small print here and get our maximum intensity just to check what happens. Now I press F. I wait until the energy drops. I press F and you see the print stops, and I can press F again and start the timeline again. And now when I press F, nothing happens because we are already at the end of the timeline. The timeline position is no more less than the timeline length. So we will always stop the timeline here at this point. Let's give it a sound, perhaps. Like a sound player. Sound to D, just to get a quick feedback when we press F. There is a nice click sound in the engine content. Just click on the rollout here and use the settings and turn on show engine content, and then type what's his name, gizmo underbar handle clicked, like this one. Take this one, that's a nice click sound. Let's test it. There we go. Okay. So next we want to display our energy as some kind of progress bar in the lower part of our viewport. And we will do this with a widget blueprint. Go into the content browser. You can just put it here. When you have a real project, it's recommended to use some kind of naming conventions and folder structure and stuff like that. But now for this tutorial, we will put the widget blueprint right here, where the first person character is also, and we'll name it WBP for widget blueprint underbar flashlight loading bar. Quickly open it, and then just drag a progress bar here into the window and make it like so. Put it quite in the middle here. Rename it, like this one will be a variable flashlight energy, like so. And also the anchor, just put it to the middle so it won't move in weird directions when you have other resolutions. Let's play. We don't see it currently. We will now put this widget blueprint into our viewport. Normally you would do this in the first person head-up display class. We will just do it in the first person character for this tutorial. It makes stuff easier and easier to explain. Don't want to blow up the content of this tutorial artificially. So we will make a begin play event here. Begin play. Then we create a widget. The widget will be the WBP flashlight loading bar, like so. Then we will make a variable out of it. My flashlight progress bar, like so. And then we will add it to our screen, add to viewport. Compile play. Now we see a progress bar there. We will give it a default value, I guess, just to see it. Like 1 would be the equivalent to 100% in a progress bar. Save it and then play it. And there we go. So now we want to hand over our energy, like our timeline length, to our energy bar, like to our progress bar. We go to the first person character and we will put it to the update event from our timeline, because this is basically running on tick when it's running, and it will update our progress bar on tick. For this we will get a reference from our progress bar widget, get a reference of it, and then since this reference is already the thing, like we don't have to cast to it or so, like this is a reference to the actual blueprint that we use here, drag from it and type in flashlight energy, get flashlight energy, there we go, and then we will set its percent, set percent. Now we have to do some calculation here. We will get a percentage of our timeline length when we divide the playback position by the timeline length. So we get another reference of our timeline here. Get that. Now get the timeline length, like a playback position first. Get playback position. divide that by a value, and this value will be the timeline length. And this hands us a value between 0 and 1. So, however, when we put it in here and then save it and play it, we'll see something weird happening. The flashlight loads up and is not depleting. So we have to do it the other way around, because what comes out here is a value that starts at 0, and as the timeline progresses to its end, it will load up to a value of 1. However, we have to remap this range that comes out there. So we drag from this divide and map this range, clamped. Perhaps it's not even necessary to have it clamped. Do it here. And this value will go from 0 to 1. That's our expected behavior. However, we want to remap the result of this from 1 to 0, because we have a fully loaded flashlight that depletes, so it loses energy over time until it is 0. Now when we press play, I press F, and you see our timeline driving our progress bar. Bam. And now I press F again, and nothing happens. Very nice. Now we want to reload our energy. Once the flashlight driver is at its end, we want to have some kind of mechanic, like a pickup, that once we overlap with a pickup, the flashlight driver will reset. It will get a new playback time, like a playback position. That's pretty easy. Just to test it, we can hard code an event here, like a B key. There it is. I would just take a reference to our flashlight driver and set its position. Set playback position, and just set it to 0 again. Like this is now our battery. I press play. I take away my energy. I stop the flashlight, and now I press B. Bam. Full energy. And press F again. And now it goes back again. And now I can completely deplete it and press B. And press F again, and now, see, it all works like a charm. However, our B key is just to test the thing. We want to make a pickup for this. And to make that pickup, we want to first establish a new actor. Go to our content browser, right click here, make a blueprint class from actor, and that's our BP underbar pickup underbar battery. So normally you would make some kind of base class for this that hosts all the standard functionalities of a pickup, like an overlap and a visual or so, and then you can hand over the event that is then triggered to all the child classes. We won't do this, we just make this one pickup now, and it will host all the functionality in this single blueprint. We need some kind of visual first. Click on add, like a cylinder, like so. I want to make it a bit smaller, like this is a really huge cylinder. Put it a bit into the air, tilt it a bit, perhaps give it some kind of rotating movement. It's not recommended to use rotating movement. In this case, you would rather use a vertex shader to rotate the thing, because that's way cheaper. So now we want to give it a point light. Put the point light into here and give it some light color, like green or so. So also use candelas here, and an intensity of 2, attenuation radius of 150 perhaps. And that's good, I guess. Nice. Save that. And it also needs some kind of collision. Like go to add and find the sphere collision. The sphere collision will be, of course, a bit larger than the whole thing. So put it a bit like here. and this sphere collision will overlap with the player. However, we now have to set up the collisions for all those visuals and collision spheres. Click on the visual, go to the collision section here, open the collision presets, click on the rollout, type in or use custom, and click on ignore, like the collision response ignore everything. This one should ignore everything, and also collision enabled should be no collision. Then go to the sphere, and in this collision section also turn it to custom. Also click on ignore everything and only overlap with pawn. Yeah, that's crucial. Just overlap with pawn. It should only overlap with a pawn. Like so. Character cannot step a pawn. So that's right, that's okay. And now just click on the green button here on component begin overlap. It creates a new event where we will drag off other actor and then send an event into a blueprint interface, which we yet have to create. So a blueprint interface system is basically a message system, like a mailbox that can receive messages or letters. So we go to the content browser and right click here, go to blueprints, a blueprint interface, BPI, like blueprint interface, player interface. So this interface can be used for all kinds of messages or values that you want to transfer to the player without having to hard reference to the player. So that's kind of cool thing. And now that you created the interface, which is here, you double click it, and per default it will create a first function for you. And this will be our reload flashlight function. Like so. It doesn't have any inputs or outputs. It's just basically one message, and once this function is used, it can be used in the player to trigger an event. We compile this. Yeah, it's crucial that you compile the interface for that we can use this function somewhere. We go back to our battery pickup. We drag off other actor, and then we type in reload flashlight. And there you see it, BPI player interface. That's basically a message that we send out to the interface. And every actor that has this interface installed, like picture a mailbox that is installed to a house. And once someone puts a message in there, like a letter, this message will do something in the receiving actor. Okay, so now we will send a message here. We will also play sound to D, just to have some kind of acoustic feedback. Click on button, cue like this one. And once we overlapped with the pickup, we also directly want to destroy it once all this logic fired. Destroy actor. Yeah, because in the end it's a pickup, it should vanish once we picked it up. Compile that. And now we go back to our first person character, and we will remove our temporary hard-coded key event here. And for that we will install our mailbox, our interface. We will do this in the class settings here. There you see the interfaces. And there's a rollout. You click on add, and there we find the player interface, BPI player interface. We compile, and now we can right click and find a reload event reload flashlight. This one will be fired once we put a message into our mailbox from another actor. So, and now we save that. And we also have to place our pickup here. Place another one here, just to test it. So, like so. Now play. I press F. Press F again to stop it. And now I will pick up one of these. Bam, more energy, full energy. And now I will deplete my energy completely. And now I will pick up 1. Full energy, press F again. There we go. Yeah, that's it. So, I hope you learned something and found this useful, and see you next time. Bye.